I remember staring at the clock on the hospital wall. The second hand was louder than it should have been. They said I'd be ready to go by 11. I told them, "Don't worry, my daughter's picking me up." I even smiled when I said it, because I believed it. You see, my daughter Sophie, she used to call me her best friend. She used to cry in my arms when she got her heart broken. She used to say, "Mom, you're all I've got." And I believed that too. But that day, something shifted. By noon, I was still sitting there, holding a little bouquet of hospital flowers and my discharge papers. Nurses passed by with polite smiles, then concerned smiles, then that look. That, "Did she forget you?" look. I kept checking my phone. One missed call from earlier that morning. A few old messages. Nothing else. I called. Straight to voicemail. I texted. "All ready, sweetie. Just waiting for you." No reply. By 1 o'clock, I lied. Told the nurse she was stuck in traffic. Told myself the same. By 2, even the nurse stopped pretending. She knelt beside me and said, "Would you like us to call someone else?" I smiled, but my heart felt heavy, like someone had placed a stone inside it. At 2:17 p.m., I got a text. Just 5 words. "Busy, sorry. Can you manage?" "No, sorry, Mom." "No, are you okay?" Just, "Can you manage?" It hit me harder than the surgery, not because of the words, but because of the silence behind them. Like I wasn't important anymore. Like I was a task, a forgotten errand. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there. You ever feel so disappointed? It's like your body goes numb. Not cold, not hot. Just gone? That's where I was. I thought about all the times I rushed to her. When she scraped her knee. When her boyfriend cheated. When her baby had a fever at 2 a.m. I was always there. Always. And now I was here. Alone. And apparently expected to manage. The nurse came back and gently asked, "Is there anything we can do for you?" And I don't know what came over me, but I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Can you show me where the rental desk is?" Because if no one was coming for me, then I'd go for myself. Have you ever been left behind by someone you trusted the most? If this story already touches your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've only just begun. But what I found when I drove back home wasn't just a locked door. It was a whole new betrayal waiting behind it. I hadn't driven in years. My hands trembled when I reached for the rental car keys. Not because I was scared of the road, but because something inside me knew I wasn't just driving home. I was driving toward the truth. I slid into the seat like a stranger. The seatbelt hugged me in a way Sophie hadn't in a long time. Cold, tight, necessary. As I pulled out of the hospital parking lot, memories started following me, like ghosts. I passed the school where Sophie had her first recital. I used to sit in the front row with flowers bigger than her. She'd look for me in the crowd, always, until she didn't. Then I drove by the little diner her father and I loved. It's closed now, just like him, just like the warmth that once lived between us. The car was silent, but my heart was loud, beating with questions I didn't want to answer. Did I raise her wrong? Did I love her too much? Or not enough? But I kept driving. Because that's what mothers do. Even when it hurts, it took me 40 minutes to reach the house. My house. As I turned into the driveway, I noticed the porch light was on. Strange. It was daytime. Her SUV was parked there, right where I used to park mine before I gave it up for her growing family, before I gave up more than just a spot. I got out of the car slowly, bag in one hand, flowers still in the other. I walked up the steps I had scrubbed clean every spring, the steps my husband built with his bare hands. I smiled, even then, until I reached for my key, slipped it in, turned. Nothing. I pulled it out, tried again, harder this time, still nothing. I stood there, frowning, heart pounding. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I was doing it wrong. I rang the bell. Once, twice. No answer. I knocked. Soft at first, then harder. I heard footsteps, then silence, then moan. Nothing. So I stepped back and looked around. That's when I noticed it. The lock was new, shiny, silver, unfamiliar. They had changed it. Without telling me, without asking me, without caring that I might come home. I felt dizzy, like the ground beneath me shifted, like I no longer belonged, in the place I once built with love. I sank onto the steps, slowly, not because I was weak, but because everything felt heavy. The neighbor across the street peeked out. Her eyes widened when she saw me. She came over, awkward smile on her face. "Margaret, I thought you moved?" "Moved?" I asked. "Sophie told us you were in assisted living now," she said softly, like she didn't want to hurt me, like the truth needed to be whispered. That was the moment I stopped shaking. Because confusion turned into understanding, and understanding turned into something sharper. She hadn't just forgotten me. She had replaced me, erased me, without a fight, without a word. I thanked the neighbor and stood up. My knees ached, but my spine felt a little straighter. I walked back to the car, started the engine. And this time, I didn't cry. Because crying didn't belong to this part of the story. Not anymore. What I did next wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. But it changed everything. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of the motel pillow or the noise in the hallway, but because my thoughts were louder than anything outside. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, asking myself the kind of questions a mother should never have to ask. How long had they been planning this? When did I stop being family and start being a burden? In the morning, I went back. Not to beg, not to cry, but to knock. Just one more time. The sun was out. The street was quiet. I stood on my own porch like a visitor, like I didn't belong. And then the door opened. But it wasn't Sophie. It was a woman I'd never seen before. Maybe in her mid-30s, messy bun, holding a coffee. She looked surprised, like I was the one who didn't belong there. "Can I help you?" she asked. I stood up a little straighter. "I think you're in my house," I said gently. She blinked. "Aren't you Sophie's mother?" I nodded. Her smile dropped. "I'm just renting the guest room for a few months. Sophie and her husband listed it. Said you'd moved into a care home." A care home. That lie again. So casual. So smooth. Like I'd been packed away like an old coat. I thanked her and stepped off the porch. My knees wobbled, but I made sure not to show it. Not anymore. On my way back to the car, a different neighbor waved from across the street. She crossed over, cautious, like she didn't want to get too close. "Margaret, I didn't expect to see you." "Me neither," I said. "She told us you were settling into a beautiful facility, said it was better for your safety. She even showed pictures." I blinked. "Pictures? What pictures?" "Your daughter said you had some memory issues. Early signs, maybe. She didn't want you to be stressed." My heart thudded in my chest. That's how they do it. They make you invisible by making you look unstable. unreliable, too old to know what's going on. I nodded. I didn't argue. What would be the point? I walked back to the car, slow but steady. Every step felt heavier than the last, not from the weight of my body, but from the weight of what I now knew. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned, thought out, executed. They didn't just forget to pick me up from the hospital. They removed me from the life I built, from the house I cleaned, the floors I mopped, the walls I painted with her baby hands. They changed the locks. They changed the story. And worst of all, they changed how the world saw me. I sat in the driver's seat, hands shaking on the wheel. I didn't drive off right away. Instead, I opened the glove compartment and reached into my purse. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just something familiar, something that was mine. And that's when I saw it. A manila envelope, old and slightly torn. It had been in there since the week after my husband died. I pulled it out slowly, felt the texture of the paper, felt something inside it shift. It was the paperwork from the house, back when Sophie had asked me to consider transferring the deed, back when she'd said, "It'll make things easier, Mom, just in case anything ever happens to you." I had signed part of it, but not all of it. Something inside me had told me to wait, to think, to breathe. And now, as I looked at it again, right there in the car, surrounded by lies and silence, I realized something important. The house was still in my name. And if that was still mine, then maybe it wasn't too late to take everything back. I sat there for a long time, holding that envelope like it was gold. Because in a way, it was. It wasn't just paper. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that I hadn't imagined things. Proof that they hadn't finished what they started. The signature line was still blank. My name, never signed. No notary, no final stamp. Which meant one thing. The house was still legally mine. They thought I'd forget. They thought I'd fold. But I remembered everything. I drove to the bank where my husband and I had once opened our joint account. There, in a little safe deposit box we hadn't touched in years, was the rest of the trail. Receipts, copies, notes, and one letter, folded in half, written in my husband's handwriting. He had written it the week he got his diagnosis. Said if anything ever happened to him, I should read it again before changing anything, especially the house. I opened it right there in the quiet room. It said, "Don't rush. Don't sign until you're ready. If they try to talk you into it, think twice. You gave them love. You don't owe them land." I read it 3 times, and then I smiled, for the first time in days. Because that's when I knew I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was aware. And that's a powerful thing. I left the bank and drove straight to a small law office. Not the big firm Sophie and her husband liked to brag about, but the one where I knew someone still remembered my name. Mr. Blakely. My husband and I had worked with him years ago when we drew up our first will. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. "Margaret," he said, standing to shake my hand. "I didn't think I'd see you again." I told him everything. Not all at once, just piece by piece, like laying down puzzle tiles. The hospital, the ride that never came, the changed locks, the lies, the fake story about assisted living, he pictures, the renter. And then I slid the papers across the desk. He read them slowly, nodded once, then again, then leaned back in his chair. "Well," he said, "they were sloppy. Lucky for you." I raised an eyebrow. "Lucky?" "They thought you were already out of the picture, which means they didn't cover their tracks." He explained things in small words. Bless him for that. The transfer wasn't legal. There were missing signatures, no witnesses, no notarization. The will hadn't been updated either, which meant my original one still stood. The house, my savings, my rights, they were all still mine. And if I wanted to, I could change everything. He slid a fresh will across the table. A new power of attorney form, a document to revoke Sophie's medical decision access, a notice to block access to my bank accounts. He looked at me kindly. "You don't have to do any of this," he said, "but if you do, we'll make it legal." I didn't hesitate. Because I realized something that day. Revenge doesn't always come with yelling. Sometimes it's just a quiet pen and the strength to sign your name. So I signed. One page, then another, and with every stroke, I felt something inside me come back to life. Not anger, not bitterness. And with the last signature, I took the first step toward something bigger than revenge. I took back my name. A few days later, I did something I probably shouldn't have, but my heart pulled me there anyway. It was my granddaughter Lily's birthday. She was turning 10, double digits. I remembered the day she was born. I held her in the hospital before her father even did. I used to sing her to sleep. She called me Gigi, said I made the best pancakes in the world, even better than her mom. I hadn't seen her in weeks. I didn't get an invite this year. No call, no card, not even a text. But I saw the pictures on Facebook. They were tagged before the party even ended. Balloons, streamers, a huge backyard setup. And the worst part? It was my backyard, my porch, my roses blooming right behind the cake table. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I got in the car. I told myself I wasn't going to do anything. Just drive by. Just see her face. But when I got close, my foot pressed the brake. There it was. My house. Filled with people. Music. Laughter. Cars lined the street. Children ran across the lawn. My lawn. I parked across from the driveway, far enough to not be noticed, but close enough to see through the windows. Lily was there, grinning with cake on her chin. Sophie bent down and wiped it gently. Rick, her husband, was grilling burgers. They looked happy. But it wasn't real, because right in the middle of the kitchen, next to the island I had picked out myself, stood my piano, the one I played lullabies on when Sophie was little. And on the mantel was a picture of the whole family. Except me. I had been cropped out. I sat in the car for over an hour, just watching, holding a small gift I had wrapped days earlier, a book Lily once asked for. I had even written a little note inside. But I didn't move, because I realized something standing still in that parking spot. They didn't forget me. They removed me. I wasn't an accident. I was a decision. A choice. They chose comfort over truth, convenience over love, silence over respect. And sitting there, I felt something in me shift again. This wasn't just about a house or a birthday party. This was about who I had been and who I was going to be next. I looked at that gift in my hands, held it tight, then placed it gently in the passenger seat. I started the car, pulled away slowly, and didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. They didn't get to decide my ending. And that night, alone in my motel room, I picked up a pen and began writing something they never expected. A brand new will. Back at the motel, I sat at the little desk by the window. The gift I never gave Lily rested by the lamp, still wrapped, still waiting. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I pulled out a pen, opened my notebook, and started with one sentence. This is not the end of me. Then I picked up the phone and called Mr. Blakely again. I want to rewrite my will, I told him, every last word. He didn't ask why. He just said, "Come in tomorrow. We'll make it right." That night, I couldn't sleep. But I didn't feel tired. I felt alive, for the first time in a long time. I kept thinking about the word burden, how quietly it creeps into people's hearts, how easily a daughter can forget that the woman she once called mommy was the same woman who skipped meals to make sure she had shoes for school. They hadn't just taken my house, they'd taken my place, as a mother, a grandmother, a human being. But I wasn't going to beg for it back. I was going to take it, not with noise, but with a signature. The next morning, I wore my nicest sweater. Not for them, for me. Mr. Blakely had everything ready. He showed me the new will. Clear, simple, final. Sophie would get nothing. Rick, nothing. The house, the savings, everything I had left, would go to Lily. Not just as revenge, but as protection. A message to the next generation. Along with the will, I added a letter. It said, "Dear Lily, if you're reading this one day, I want you to know that I loved you more than anyone will ever tell you, and that I didn't disappear. I was pushed out, but I found my way back." I signed it all, every page. Then Mr. Blakely slid over one last form, a revocation of power of attorney. This would remove Sophie from every medical, legal, and financial decision related to me. "I'm sure she'll be surprised," he said softly. I smiled. "She forgot to pick me up from the hospital." "Mom," I replied, "but I just picked myself up from everything." On my way out, he handed me copies of all the documents. I held them like armor. Because that's what they were now, my quiet shield. I walked past a park where children were playing. A little girl in pigtails tripped and scraped her knee. Her grandma rushed over and held her tight. I stood there a while, watching, remembering. And then I got an idea, not out of anger, but out of purpose. I drove back to the motel, sat at that same desk, and began writing something new. Not legal documents this time, not a letter, but a list. Of everything Sophie had done, every message, every lie, every name she used to try to remove me. Because now, I wasn't just rewriting my will. I was preparing to expose hers. 2 weeks later, Sophie got a letter. It was short, polite, formal. A summons to the lawyer's office, no reason listed, just a date and time, and my name at the bottom. I knew she'd come. Curiosity was always stronger than her guilt. Mr. Blakely and I sat in the small conference room. I brought no anger with me, only truth. Then the door opened. Sophie walked in with Rick behind her, all confidence and tight smiles. "Mom," she said, laughing a little, "what is this? Some kind of estate update?" I didn't answer. I just looked at Mr. Blakely and nodded. He opened the file, cleared his throat, and began. As of the date signed, Margaret Elaine Rhodes has updated her last will and testament. The following changes are effective immediately. Sophie leaned back, arms crossed. Rick looked at his phone. All property, assets, and accounts, including the residence located at 4820 Willow Lane, are to be left solely to Lily Rhodes, her granddaughter. Silence. Then Sophie blinked. "Wait, what?" Blakely continued. "Power of attorney and medical authority are revoked from Sophie Rhodes due to recent suspected elder coercion and property interference." Her voice rose fast. "What are you doing?" I still hadn't spoken. Rick scoffed. "Mom, come on. This is ridiculous. You were fine with everything. What's all this now?" Mr. Blakely slid a small stack of papers across the table. "Please review these. They include screenshots of public Facebook posts, testimony from a neighbor, and hospital records that show the day of discharge. The day your mother was left waiting, alone." Sophie's face turned pale. "I didn't mean to leave you," she mumbled. "You never told me what time." I finally looked up. My voice was steady. "You changed the locks." She froze. "You told people I had dementia. You told Lily I was resting somewhere safe. And you rented out my home while I was still healing from surgery." "Mom." "I'm not your mom in this room," I said. "I'm a woman protecting what's hers." Rick leaned forward. "This isn't fair. You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted. And I did. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. Maybe real, maybe not. I didn't care, because I wasn't there for apology or understanding. I was there for something better. Resolution. They asked more questions, tried to twist the timeline, defend themselves. But Mr. Blakely had it all lined up. Dates, names, witnesses, even the letter from my husband, explaining why I never finalized the deed. I watched their world bend, then crack, and I didn't have to raise my voice once. When it was over, Sophie sat still, looking at the floor. Rick walked out, didn't even look back. I stood, gathered my papers, then paused at the door. "You took everything I gave," I said quietly. "But you forgot one thing." Sophie looked up, broken. "What?" I stared at her, not angry, just tired. "You forgot who I was before I became your mother. And now, the granddaughter you thought you could lie to? She was about to learn everything." A few days after the reading, there was a knock at my motel door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, my heart almost stopped. It was Lily, my sweet, smart, curious Lily, standing there in her pink sneakers, holding a backpack and a notebook. She looked nervous, but her eyes were steady. "Hi, Gigi," she said softly. "Can I come in?" I nodded, speechless, stepped aside. She walked in like she'd been there before, like she already knew where the quiet was. We sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't ask why I wasn't at the house. She didn't ask about the party. She just opened her notebook. Inside were pages, full of stories I used to tell her, bedtime tales, little life lessons, scribbled in her own handwriting. "I started writing them down," she said, "because I didn't want to forget." I bit my lip to keep from crying. Then she said, "Why did Mom say you were gone?" I didn't rush the answer. I told her the truth. Not all the hard details. She was still a child. But enough. I told her I was never sick in my mind, just hurt in my heart. That sometimes grown-ups get selfish, and they think they're doing the right thing when really, they're just trying to hide their shame. Her eyes stayed locked on mine the whole time. Then she whispered, "I missed you." And I hugged her like I never wanted to let go again. She handed me something else from her bag. A drawing. It was the house. Our house. But this time, we were both standing in front of it. Me and her. No one else. She'd drawn a big garden, piano notes floating out the windows. A dog, too. "I want us to live here again," she said. "Just you and me." I laughed gently. "I don't think your mom would like that very much." She looked down. "I don't care." That's when I knew. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about her. Her future. Her knowing the truth. Her having someone in her corner. I pulled out the copy of the will, showed her her name right there in bold, told her what it meant. She looked surprised, but not excited, just serious. "Does this mean I have to take care of it now?" she asked. I nodded. "One day, yes, but not yet." She was quiet for a while. Then she looked up and said, "Then I promise I'll take care of you first." That's when the tears finally came. Slow, quiet, honest. We spent the rest of the afternoon playing cards, talking about school, laughing at silly memories. When she left, she hugged me twice. Once like a kid, and once like someone who finally knew the truth. And what she did next proved she was more my granddaughter than her mother ever expected. A week later, Mr. Blakely called me again, said there was something I needed to see. I thought maybe it was another paper to sign, another legal form, another update in this long battle I never asked for. But when I got there, he smiled in a way I hadn't seen before. "Your granddaughter," he said, "is quite the firecracker." Then he handed me a letter, written in blue pen, folded carefully. It was from Lily. "Dear Mr. Blakely, I want to know how to protect my Gigi. I'm not a grown-up yet, but I'm learning. If anyone tries to take her house again, what can I do? She's not old, she's gold, and I'm going to keep her safe." I covered my mouth with my hand. The words hit me like sunlight after a storm. She didn't ask for money, or gifts, or favors. She asked how to stand by me. Later that evening, I heard Sophie had called the lawyer's office in a panic. Tried to argue, demanded to see the will again, said there had to be some mistake. There wasn't. There never had been. You see, when you try to steal what doesn't belong to you, you never expect someone to fight back. And you especially don't expect it from a quiet woman in a sweater or a little girl with a notebook. But together, we were stronger than they ever gave us credit for. The next day, Lily came back to visit. We went for a walk in the park. She held my hand the whole time. No shame, no awkwardness. At one point, she looked up and said, "Can we plant something together? In the garden, I mean?" I asked her why. She shrugged, then said, "Because when something grows from us, no one else can say they made it." I nodded, told her I'd like that very much. That night, I took the final step. I sent a letter to Sophie, short and quiet. "You locked me out, so I locked you out of my will. May you never teach Lily to do the same to you. Mom." No anger, no threats, just truth. She never replied, and honestly, I didn't expect her to, because people like Sophie, they don't apologize when they lose. They just disappear when they can't win. And me? I didn't need an apology. I already had peace. But peace wasn't the end of this story, because the house that once held betrayal was about to hold something beautiful again. The house was quiet when I walked through the door. Not empty, just peaceful. I had the keys again, not just to the locks, but to my life. The curtains were different. The furniture had been moved. Some of the old warmth was missing. But I had time, and a granddaughter who wanted to plant flowers with me, and that's more than most people get. The first thing I did was open every window, let the light in, let the past out. Then I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table where I'd once folded Lily's baby clothes. I placed the will in a drawer, not because I needed to see it every day, but because I knew it was there. Truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to stand. Over the next few weeks, Lily came by often. We painted the fence, pulled weeds, hung wind chimes. We planted a rose bush together, right under the kitchen window. She named it Hope. One day I asked her, "Why that name?" She shrugged, then smiled. "Because it's what came back when you did. Sometimes the deepest revenge is not what you take back, but what you grow forward." I started volunteering again, at the hospital, at the local library. I even joined a group of women my age who meet every Wednesday to talk about things no one else listens to. We call it the Porch Circle, and let me tell you, those women are full of fire. We share stories, some are funny, some are hard. But all of us have this one thing in common. We stayed quiet for too long. Not anymore. And if you're listening to this now, if any part of my story sounds like your story, please remember this. You are not a burden. You are a foundation. You are not too late. You are right on time. They locked me out, so I picked up the pen and rewrote the ending. And I'll leave you with the same question I asked myself the day I changed the will. What part of your story still belongs to you? And what are you ready to take back? Tell me in the comments. I'm listening.